All right, it is. I don't know. I have no idea what day it is, but it's the Beer Temple podcast.
What does time even mean anymore?
It means nothing.
To never be heard, seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard, seen from again.
Welcome to the Beer Temple podcast. I'm your host, Chris Quinn. This is a little, I think I called it an interstitial earlier with Mike, but we're all sitting around. Since you last heard my voice, we have ended up pouring the Harvest Ale. This is part two,
Killer.
Yeah, of the of our talk about imports with Alexi. We're all sitting around enjoying a beer that is old enough to drink now, and I hope you guys enjoy part two of our conversation. And I'm just gonna step aside now and let you guys hear it out from there. So enjoy. Welcome back to the Beer Temple podcast. I'm Chris Quinn. I'm joined by Alexi and Mike, and we're talking imports. Alexi was just about to take it away when I said, just hold that thought for about 20 minutes. And during that time, I figured I've got so much beer that's just dying and needs to be drank, so I grabbed some imports. I've got a 2018 St. Bernard, a 2008. The Dole Still Knocked. I've got I don't know. It's probably similar year. St. Bernardus, maybe 06 to 08.
I think the best by date is 2016 on that one.
Yeah, so that's whatever. I've got an Orval from bottled in 2011, and then I've got J.W. Lee's Harvest Ale Barley Wine from 1999. So
this is to illustrate that imports have died because people just buy them and put them in the back room of their store
and forget about them. So Alexi, what would you like me to open first?
I think that I would love to have that Orval first,
okay,
and
cool.
then move into the differently yeast-driven beers at this point, because maybe the malts died in a different way in those beers.
All right, so I'll open this. Ooh, that didn't have any hiss when we opened. Okay, cool. See a tiny bit.
Very un-Orval.
We'll see how these hold up. Anyway, we were talking about how U.S. beer has influenced the influencers. And how there are, a new wave of breweries in Europe that were influenced by U.S. What about the beers that were the original influencing beers on the U.S.? Or at least the styles or whatever. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that the beers, like, as our market has sort of matured and it's become a little more competitive for Belgian brewers. I can start with them because they offer a couple of rich examples.
Sorry, not to interrupt, but Chris just poured it. It is it is a very, very dark brown color.
Yeah, that is
making faces.
That's oxidized. Yeah.
Beer's pretty dead. We can try. I mean, you guys are welcome to try it.
We can
pass on that one.
We can pass on that. So I think something on this table actually made me think about adaptation into our market from a brewer that we would consider to be traditional and unshakable in some way, and that would be actually St. Bernardus. So they've worked with DNV for a very long time, and they've sold a ton of beer here over the years. But I think for them and a lot of other brewers of that class, whether they be Belgian family brewers or whether they be small craft or artisanal brewers, there was a shift that occurred kind of in 15 and 16 to where our market matured because the number of breweries were expanding by the thousands every year, and there was just a little less market space for them because people here were interested in native styles. So we think of Belgian brewers as traditional and as sort of stuck in time with the similar sort of ilk that of the German brewers. But I think that that's not necessarily the most apt comparison. St. Bernardus put out what they did, like a barrel-aged AB 12. They did some variations of their beers, the Tokyo Wit as well.
Yep.
So there's like a lot of examples of brewers from that sort of part of the world that we consider to be classic or traditional, adapting to our market to be able to continue to sell. And that, to me, was an indication as a buyer at that time, like more that there were sales troubles if they were having to do that instead of relying on the tried and true.
Right. And it's an interesting insight into like, well, they aren't just immune from the effects of, I guess, global capitalism, just because they're like a monastery that like, this is what we do. This is very traditional. And that it has to factor into that conversation about the effects of the American market on imports and what comes in general. I mean, obviously because they're importing it to the U.S., but they make those things specifically to cater to the idea that we gotta have new things, we gotta have innovative things, we gotta have I don't know, we can't just send them single, double, triple, and whatever else.
And those are like market observations that they're making of what's popular here too. So these are products that are created in a really sort of unique vacuum because they're created with some idea of what's going on here, but then they're filtered through the lens of, okay, what is this specific brewery interested and willing to do? And it has to be sort of cloaked or kind of set with the limitations of what may be traditional or what may be Reinheitsgebot or what may be, may generally be acceptable for them to do as far as what's appropriate for their brand image and their production style.
I poured us a beer that was 10 years younger than the last Orval we
Which
just
is still
poured.
a couple years old.
No, 2021. I think the last one was 2011. This is 2021.
I remember having this beer in a bar in Bruges. That was like a bar from like the 1500s, and it being like a couple of months old by my dating of it, and it being just this insanely different beer than I've ever had in America. It doesn't start very strange or funky at all. It's like kind of like an English bitter or pale, and it doesn't really have like
It's a great beer.
most
Super
of the
drinkable.
Things, yeah, most of the things that we associate with it. It's a very weird, unique, specific beer. This Orval.
So I ran out to get a dump bucket because I realized some of these beers may not be the best, but
It's so good.
But so Alexi, it sounded like you were talking about the classics are seeing some market pressures in the United States. I'm assuming the fact that there's 8,000 new competitors has a lot to do with that, and that was mentioned. Yeah.
Well, and from the time we started talking about to now, the shift of where's the best beer coming from, at least in the way that American consumers are thinking about it now, and American consumers who are focused on artisanally produced things specifically, right? Where it'd be like when we were talking about Philadelphia or the Mid-Atlantic in the early 90s or mid-90s, or what was it, the 1890s when you went to college? It was that the best beer was coming from Europe. And then we flipped that the same way we flipped the focus of influence to being like the best beer comes from as close as possible to you. Whether or not that's true, that's what the American consumer who is focused on artisanally produced beer
And food and cheese,
yeah.
like it was
Locality
echoed through
is
other
so-
consumer culture,
which is
lenses, right?
Which is probably a response to that thing we were talking about, that post-World War II homogenization of flavor and of production technique, that this is like we're still responding to that. Because like I think we're still getting deeper into the local is better thing, right?
Yeah, I think it's also marketing too. I think
Totally.
the local people have, they have a vested interest in telling you that local is better because they're local to you and their market is all local. So
There's also very compelling economic reasons to do it, right? To keep money within your own small community when ever more it's more convenient to send money away from the local economy.
oh, for sure. I mean, there's many reasons for it.
So
So
that has a big impact on the vibrancy of imported beers, and specifically these kind of like, I don't know if they're legacy brands, but these like
let's go then.
established brands.
Let's quickly go through the big three brewing nations. Their classic styles, right? Unadulterated styles, Americanized, right? Germany, how they doing? I mean, they're doing fine, right? I mean, no worries. They can drink it all themselves. If you want some, they got plenty for you too, right? I mean, they still kill it. They still make the best classic styles. I think they are in, they're the slowest to, from a production of beer standpoint, I think they're the slowest to kind of change. They're very stubborn to the U.S. ways. Not entirely. There are people like, Fry Guys has been for a long time, but
Sure.
I will say on the technology side, on the hop innovation side, look out because it looks like they're getting ready to, if they're not already, just destroy everybody else in the world. In from
Fry Guys specifically?
No hops. The hop science coming out of Germany.
Well, they've always had the best hop science.
And some of the best brewing science as well. I think like another component to this conversation about German beer is when we think about the styles of beer that are prominent coming from Germany, i.e. lager, that's part of the race to the bottom as far as price in what we see in this country, and specifically for blonde ales, golden ales, and lagers. And German beer can fight that battle too, because this is not the biggest market for...
Somebody's having fun.
This isn't the biggest market for them, and they can drink it at home. So they can fight for those placements. I mean, there are kegs you can buy of German lager that are price competitive with any type of local lager. So I'm not concerned about them at all.
Right. Sure. Okay.
I just want it quicker and fresher.
Right.
So let's move on from that. The Belgians. How are the Belgians doing? The classics, the classic styles, the stuff that has been coming in for the past 10 years plus, let's say. What do you guys think about the state of Belgian beer?
Well, I mean, on a personal, I don't know broadly about it, but in Chicago and for America, I think Shelton Brothers was a huge loss to the artisanal producer of Belgian beer. Like not necessarily the Trappist producer, which is also artisanal, but like the small Saison producer and the smaller craft producer of Belgian beers. When I look at that, other than like Van Berg and De Wolf, maybe Merchant de Vin, bringing in some really great stuff, like the things that was really exciting.
Van Berg and De Wolf doesn't even exist anymore, I don't think. But they were DMV imports.
Right.
DMV is a big, but
anyway. Like the places that really inspired me to make beer no longer have a path to even coming in to America, as far as I am aware of what's going on with the distribution rights of Shelton Brothers.
Definitely had a hit. Yeah, definitely had a hit.
The De La Sens, the Blaugies, the Aberons, which is French, but around that border, like those are the ones that are incredibly exciting to me, which I started the brewery I currently own and operate because it was hard to get them when they still imported those things. Now they don't even import them anymore. When you look at the commercial viability of a book as large as Shelton Brothers, when you look at someone who is a shrewd business person running an importer, like the small spelt Saison producer is probably not the one you're going to pick out of the book if you're making a financial decision, right? And so it's gotten even more important to me that I continue making the beers that I'm making, even if it's just for myself. But because those flavors very well could disappear, right? DuPont's not going to go away, but they're like all those other little Saison producers are in a very precarious situation.
Well, how are they
as far as
doing
the American market is.
in Europe? It's kind of
They
what I
sell-
wanted to start from. Do you
think
have any ideas, guys?
They sell a lot of their beer, and most of their beer was being sold to America.
Was being sold to America.
I think there was a shift, again, like in that 2016-17 era, that we saw a big decline in Belgian imports in the U.S., and a lot of that had to go elsewhere. So that's when other European markets emerged, such as France, Italy, Spain, Russia are big.
Russia's been huge, and Korea surprisingly loves Saison. Like I'm not sure why. Well, they have great taste, I suppose, but we've been in contact with people from Korea that want to bring in because they know we make Saison. Like we don't have enough beer to send them. We got contacted from people from China that want to bring in Saison, but like so it must be a thing that Chris has poured in another beer that is
These beers might be all dead.
shades darker than it should be. But yeah, I mean America might not be the driving force behind where those things are being sold anymore. To be perfectly honest, like. We view it through the lens of like Shelton Brothers was the most important importer of these things to America for sure, but that might not be globally the most important buyer of those things.
I think our influence as a consumer market for those styles isn't what it used to be, and I think that it can get back there, though, in some regards. It's not going to be at the same volume, but I think that with a reemergence of the on-premise post-pandemic, there's a lot of opportunities for some of these higher-end Belgian expressions to gain traction in some way, just because of their expression of place, their proximity to wine, the format. There's possibilities, I think, but it's going to require a little bit of work.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and who's going to put the work in? I mean, there's going to have to be somebody here who puts in the work. And it is good that there's other markets that are emerging. Because more importantly than it being available here, it has to just exist, right? I mean, you have to at the very least, you want to be able to go there and get it. And I have a dump bucket if anyone wants to dump theirs.
I mean, these aren't going to be things that are like dead languages. Probably there's not going to be like there's one speaker of Saison left, but it is a thing where the accessibility in America, which is what is important to us, whether or not we want to like be like, oh, we're globally thinking about this, but like the accessibility of these things in America has gone down significantly.
Oh yeah.
So even if it, I remember you talking, Chris, about imported beers disappearing well before Shelton Brothers is kind of
getting slowly pushed out of books.
Right.
Yeah,
and so
it has been.
Yeah, there is like a feeling where it's like these things are important and need to exist. And they inform what we were talking about before, where like you can have an experience where you taste something and you can contextualize it and have such a richer experience with it because of your ability to contextualize it. If the liquid that actually contains those flavor, I don't know, the packets of flavor that will ignite that in you is gone, then that's a very sad thing. I might be being a little black-pilled on that.
So then, and then the last of the brewing countries is England. So the classic beer in England, I think, truly is endangered, and those were the
Truly the seltzer, like Truly
Yes.
is endangered in England. Sorry.
Yes, I think Truly is endangered in England, and it's
Thank
sad.
God.
So let's just let's talk about that for the rest of the show. No, Truly, Sam Adams their stock is being crushed because those high noons I was talking about are killing Truly, and like their stock has like dropped by like 50%. It's crazy.
I should
Anyway.
pay attention that I own stock in Sam Adams. I've had it since I was
Getting-
like 20.
It's getting destroyed right now.
Well, it's still up like 9,000% from
Right.
10 years ago.
Yeah. So
So I'm rich.
the UK beers are the ones that are, I think, at most risk existentially.
Traditional UK beers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I would say so. I think, stuff like mild and brown and stuff like that, and porter. I think porter's pretty much dead.
They're at
in the
risk.
UK. I mean,
As in production period or in the American market?
I think so, except for like the craft producers of it. I mean, there's no like contemporary producers of porter. I mean, I'm sure someone's, Ron Pattinson's going to be like, "What are you talking about?" But
there's
no,
these 3
they
places
make
making 20
bitter.
barrels of it every year.
But even mild, when I was there years ago, was seen as like an old man's drink on its way out.
Yeah.
And I think craft has invigorated the brewing scene there, so I think there's a good chance that it'll shift and it'll change. But I think specifically what I wanted to talk about was like the current state of the influencers. I mean, I'm sure I don't think they're imminently going to go away, but they don't seem to be in a good place in England, from my experience. I don't know. What do you think, Alexi?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point, because on the one hand you have Camera, if we were to use that as sort of the indigenous style rubric for British beer, and then on the other hand you have what we could call like contemporary craft producers, the Colonels, the Wylams, the Northern Monks, like all these people that are doing in some cases emulations of what's going on here. But those people are actually creating some of the best styles of those beers in Europe. So if they could alone subsist quite a bit on sending beer to other European countries. So they are quite not at risk. In fact, they're probably positioned really well because of the relevancy of what they're doing.
And they're making traditional style?
No, they're doing predominantly contemporary, but there's no
Right.
doubt that they're doing their own spins on British classics, probably maybe not necessarily cask, but there's a tension there, right, that I think has been discussed for quite some time, and that is like, how does Camera sort of work with the contemporary craft world in Britain? Because ultimately, if their goals are mutual, and that is to continue to eat up market share from big beer, they're stronger together, right, instead of fighting each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, then you also get to this interesting thing that doesn't exist in America, where there is a artisanal production, historic artisanal production in England that is now butting up against or rubbing with new craft producers, right?
Yes.
America, there's no like, well, like Budweiser's kind of our buddy, but also not. Like, it's like America, it's very dichotomous of like, there is big beer and there is like, I mean, I guess there's a couple of smaller producers of macro lager, but then there's like all these like our artisanal producers. Whereas in England, it's not necessarily the case that there is like Budweiser and macro lager versus everyone else. So how do you keep this tradition of historical, like traditional styles of mild and all that going with like the market pressures pushing towards artisanal produced consumers wanting more modern flavored or more modern takes on those things?
Yeah.
And
I have to,
and what's the friction and what's the confluence of those two things, right? Where do they rub against each other and where are they actually sympathetic?
Yeah, I went to, I'm not going to name names, but I went to a few breweries in England that were kind of working class city breweries that seemed to be highly regional and even considered to be kind of like a small player regionally, making mild, making bitter, right, on literally steam and belt-driven breweries. And with like cool ships, I've mentioned it before, but like cool ships because that's what they have. And tradesmen.
But the ethos is totally different, right?
They're tradesmen.
They're making the widgets. It just happens to be something that's more flavorful. This is like when people be like, American beer is just like having sex in a canoe, like it's like close to water. But and like that, why we would get made fun of is because like that was their industrial beer, were these like smaller artisanal producers. But like it's when you go 40 years into the future, those smaller artisanal producers that are trying to make a widget closer to home are still just making like a less enticing widget, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of exactly where I was going. I would say they care about beer. I mean, they loved beer in their own way, in a little bit different way than we did. Gave an amazing tour, and it was I had this sadness going through these things because nobody but us was on the tour. Nobody would take a tour. Maybe that's just not a thing there. I don't know. But they were very ingratiating. Like they would have someone like meet us and have little like biscuits and stuff, and like the vice president of one of these breweries,
there,
or I think
right?
the president of the cookies of the brewery came and was like literally the generations before this person paintings were on the wall, and it was like a generational thing, and it was and then they had things like their hops were literally kept up in the roof unrefrigerated. And I was like, "Are you They're like, "No, these are just the hops. They're not aging them or anything."
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And then,
well, that is honestly that is kind of cool, right? Like if you go and you taste those things, you're like, "Oh, I get this like this is now just like me being more of a nerd about it." But I get these like footy weird notes that would be off flavor. It's like, oh, because they store their hops like these people just across the channel store their hops. Like you can like contextualize it in that way. Is it a good way to create a product to compete on in a global marketplace?
is it a good thing for your product? And I would say no.
Well, it depends on what the aims of your product are. That's a great way to store the hops for lambic. So what it's contextual about whether or not it's a great thing for your product. Mm-hmm. If your product is supposed to be a style that's evolved in a way where fresh hops are important, then absolutely not. But I I was being pedantic, and so you are right. It's not great for that product, but
Right. I mean, I would think that like, and they weren't going to, one, research it, and two, listen to what any research probably had to say. I mean, someone's boss would have had to tell them that this is how we're doing it now in order for them to do it, because that's just how it was. And I was like, man, to me, it was like cool and just a window into the past. And I felt fortunate to be there, because I was like, this place is not going to be around in 50 years for sure. I don't know if it'll be around in 20 years, and I could be completely wrong, but
Sure.
That was the vibe that I had, prescribed to it. But I want to keep moving forward a little bit. So we went through Germany, Belgium, England. And that's kind of the current state of those breweries there, and we've also talked about what how the state of imports here, and then where do we go from here, Alexi? What should we talk about next? Do we want to talk about what's kind of filled the void here? In their absence, or do we want to talk about where these people are going in Europe without the U.S. market? I think there's a couple different ways we could go, or maybe a different direction that I haven't thought of.
I think it would be fun to talk about maybe a little bit of what's happening in their place, I feel as though maybe our collective experience is a little better suited for that topic. Maybe for a future appearance, I'll come with some stacked with some statistics on inter-European export numbers.
And I'm kind of digging this still knocked, man.
Yeah, it's like chewing on a bunch of like dried fruit. It's incredible.
Dude, yeah.
It's
Pretty cool.
2008 still knocked, and I tasted it. I got a whiff of oxidation when I opened it up, and then I poured it, and it was super dark. And then I also poured it, noticed that it was very flat, and then I tasted it, and I was like, yeah, this will do.
Well, this is also like, as
It's
far
cool,
as
man.
producing beers goes, like oxygen isn't always the biggest enemy. It's an enemy for a lot of the things you want to do, but it's not always your biggest enemy.
I mean, I am enjoying this beer. I'll say that. I'm enjoying it.
This
Yeah.
is exactly like how I would want to enjoy this particular beer with like the rich dark fruit entity that it has, and like there's a little bit of like bread crust on it as well. Like it's really, really rich, and I think that like these are the kinds of beers that age really, really well and that are constructed to age, right?
Yeah, this is going to be a very specific note, but we're making part of that agave beer I was talking about earlier. We're doing a version with pechuga, the Miel de Pechuga, which is the stuff left over in the still after they make pechuga. So a bunch of almonds and spices and raisins and stuff. And I had to clean the drum we were aging that in out today, and it smells a lot like this beer, where it's just like these almondy, like nutty, but also like dried fruit. It's a pretty wild beer. It's pretty awesome.
Cool. Glad you guys like it.
Yeah.
Glad I sat on it for over a decade.
Just
You
for this,
knew something was gonna happen,
You knew
yeah.
you'd be doing this,
Right. There's several more maybe over there too.
Yeah. I think we can definitely jump into sort of like what's happening now in light of what we've sort of discussed. So
Great.
where I would probably begin with this is just like a shorter part on what are the importers doing, because some are kind of doing what they've always done and maybe quote unquote rationalize their SKUs. But there's two that I think have done something kind of interesting in a very different way to keep that model relevant, because whether or not tons of beer is coming to the US from Europe, there's something to that business model that's absolutely relevant and that has its own kind of influencing power. And so there's two examples that are really different that I want to that I'm curious about both of your perspectives on, and one being Be United, an importer based in Connecticut, quite close to your family estate,
That's
right?
Yeah,
Mike?
my family estate.
Have you been to their brewery?
I haven't. So I've only been back to Connecticut about like 4 times in the last like 10 years. To be honest.
Wow.
But they live. They live.
They do live.
My parents live about 40 minutes from OEC and Be United, which I guess OEC is an interesting part of that conversation too, right?
Yeah,
Unbelievable
I
what
think
they're
like
doing.
just to set a little bit of a stage for listeners, Be United is an importer that was founded in the early '90s. I alluded to them earlier as a company that the founder Matthias Neidhart basically had a copy of a Michael Jackson book and went to a bunch of very seasoned European classic producers, Schlenkerla, Dodola, Hitachino in Japan as well, Riesdorf, Uruguay, a number of different producers that we consider to be classic. And he's really sort of not only brought a really great portfolio over, but has thought through a lot of the customer-facing issues. And by customer, I mean like the retailer issues. One way with his tank project, so basically bringing over beers and finishing them in Connecticut.
Right. That cannot be understated in like how
That's an innovation,
cool and
isn't
amazing.
it?
It's a very cool innovation.
It's an imaginative
But
innovation.
to bring over the beer in bulk and package it here, and that's like a deep knowledge of what makes these beers taste fresh and what makes these beers viable in the American market, and like presenting them in a way that people couldn't have before, right? Like you couldn't have had these beer. Well, in cans, I guess the format is one thing, but packaged within a couple of weeks or a couple of months, like don't have to. Like, it's
Let's dive into that a little bit and just explain to people how amazing how on like a meta level it's so like geeky cool. So they're basically shipping them over in containers. I think at this point I think they're refrigerated to some level.
Refrigerated containers that they like kind of like they used to like mostly use to move like industrial amounts of like orange juice and stuff around it. Like it's amazingly cool.
And I think now as they get better at it, they're allowing their beers to condition over on the voyage over. Does that sound familiar to the the classic story of IPA going to India and stuff like that? I mean, using the new technologies to your advantage, and then also even think of it this way: then they bought a canning line. Now they're canning stateside. They have a canning line they're doing here, and what are they putting right on the top of the can? What are you worried about when you look at any import? How old is it? So what is right on the top? They're packaged on date.
Well, and this is like a big thing, right, with the import beers is like, what is, at least for me, it was like, what does that beer taste like there, fresh? Because I like loved a lot of those beers, right, and all those saisons. I literally went to Belgium to make sure that the brewery I was starting wasn't basing its beers on old tasting saison, right? And so when you get to have like fresh versions of Schlenkerla Helles and fresh versions of De Glass and Toren and cans, and like it's amazing. When we did that podcast with Doug about innovation, like I like my colloquial version of innovation we came to is like I want to be excited by the thing that you're telling me is new, and like I am so giddy about what they're doing with that, and that makes me feel like, oh, there's something new being applied to this old idea of bringing beer across the ocean. How do we do it better? And like that's so cool.
And I think they've been able to get a little bit of a lucky break, all things considered, by how some of the smaller IPA-driven breweries have pushed up the price point of a 4-pack 16-ounce beer. People now aren't freaking out at a 4-pack for $15. What?
Yeah.
Like now it's like, oh wow, 4-pack for a $15 of a lager. Very different discussion.
Right.
Very different discussion.
But that's a very like cool thing for an importer or a distributor, like a middle person for what we would have on the show. Be like aware of the market and use it to their advantage. Like that's amazing and cool. And sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but it's like it still makes me very excited, and they're the smartest. Like
and De Glass and Toren, when it was in cans, I think you and I may have differed on this, but the De Glass and Toren cans that they did, they're doing a classic saison, just like
we didn't differ on that at all.
It was
the whole 4-pack. I was supposed to bring them to share with people. I brought. So we all after we finished brewing, we shared saison and other stuff. And that was in. I only brought one can to share with everyone else because the rest of the other 3 were consumed within. Yeah,
those were 12-ounce cans of
conditioned too. Like
they were like rocks. Those cans were like
right,
rocks.
But that's like them. Like so, they were canned in Connecticut. So they followed the instructions of like this is how I want you to can it. So they're still being reverent to the producer too. Like it's a very very
and how cool is it
project?
How the format of that beer changes how you drink the beer, because there's definitely something that I think has helped Belgian beer in the presentation of the 750, the cork and cage with their mare. It wasn't literally, it was wrapped in paper. It wasn't a cork and cage, but it was wrapped in paper, and it was like, oh, that's super cool.
Yeah,
and you drink it a certain way. When it's a 4-pack 12-ounce, what do? You drink it and you're like, damn, this beer is good. I'm going to drink this whole can. And you're like, man, I want a second can.
Yeah.
And that you have just domed a 750 at that point. Yeah. And you realize how crushable to use the parlance of Mr. Fahey, those beers are.
Yeah.
And it's funny how the packaging has helped that beer in that way. I still do think the presentation with the paper wrap is amazing. And so Be United's doing that, but then they're also still bringing in
I would like to
Jardin
paper wrapped cans.
goods. Right, exactly. Waxed on the inside, double waxed.
Inside wax, Jardin goose.
Dude, which when oh my gosh, my brain has melted, I think, this past year. From oh my God, I'm embarrassed, but I don't remember his name from Cantillon Visited, and
Jean Renoir?
No, I remember that name. And was at the bar and
Gary. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
There's no Gary
Yeah.
there.
Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were going around the shop and stuff like that, and he was like, "Oh, that in Belgium, that's garbage, this and that." And I was kind of
And
like,
he was pointing at all the other lambic.
I think he was part of his was. No, I was joking.
They wouldn't even know.
But it was, I was like, yeah, and I hadn't, whatever, not to throw other people under the bus, but I'm not the buyer of that beer. But anyway, I was like, yeah. Mm-hmm. But then he was at Jardin. You just threw Max on the bus. I don't even know if Max did the order on that one, honestly. And then he was like, Jardin, he's like, they're the real deal. That's the most authentic lambic.
Well, yeah, because they buy their lambic from Cantillon, don't they?
No, they don't.
Really?
No, they are a farm. They produce everything. It's like they grow everything there. Everything is theirs. They grow their grain. They grow
other
everything.
people buy from Jardin. Token buys from Jardin.
Yeah.
Right, never mind.
Yeah. I don't think no. So he's like, they're the real deal. He's like the black label. They have a white label.
The black label is
and the black label is, but who are they with? Be United, which is super super cool that they're they don't need to have the bombast of Cantillon or Drie, but Jardin was like always sitting there, just being like that banger on the shelf that when people wanted that like uber funk that you wanted from that
Uber funk.
it's always been there. So, and I remember thinking like, why isn't Be United like? Why aren't they bringing this like crazy? Like they don't have the stuff that people are just like can't give enough bottle caps to. They've never been that brewery. They've been the old heads brewery, and in the long run, their taste, their at least so far, I mean, their acumen, their business acumen, shows that they're just have been very very smart and frankly are saving, in my mind, imports and introducing them to a new generation.
Well, we've evolved into the era of the curated imports, right? Where like you can't have everything that you've been to in your book. It's just too many things. And so the fact they have a very select group of very fantastic producers has made it easier for them to tell the story of it, to import those things the way we were talking about and package them in a way that matters. And I mean, I don't know, it's the most beautiful idea of an importer that I can think of right now.
Mm-hmm. I think like the other thing that strikes me of them are a couple of things. One, the like inherent trust that the suppliers have in them to be able to handle the beer.
Which is not your typical relationship with someone.
Do you think that anyone would trust Shelton Brothers to bring containers over of beer?
I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but no.
So I think that says a lot about their relationships. And I think that when at the outset we were thinking of this like tank project, you think of Schlenkerla, you think of producers that have been around forever. Are they going to be on board with their beer being in cans?
Yeah.
But that's where the trust and the innovation comes in, right? And then the other component to the imagination is the on the tank project isn't just the canning, but it's also the keg packaging here stateside. So there's a huge environmental impact that occurs when moving any type of keg overseas. And so to package things stateside in U.S. couplers, I know this is like a wonky retailer's perspective, but I think that is a pretty awesome thing to offer, and it has a better environmental impact. If I recall correctly from a conversation I had with Matthias, that was one of the things was, he wanted to solve 18 different problems, and this was the one way to do it all. And one of which was, how do I get my suppliers to buy in on an environmental impact initiative? Well, I can't, but I can do what I can stateside for that. And so the container project solved all of that.
It's amazing.
From a coupler standpoint, and we're getting very inside baseball that like literally nobody cares about, but it is amazing because then it's like when you're dealing with Be United, you don't need to have all these insane different Euro kegs, which like Euro couplers, which I mean, there's couplers that I think maybe at this point we have them all, but there were years where it's like, well, we'll bring it in.
What even is that one?
Right. Like you have to supply us with the coupler. We cannot connect to that keg.
Right.
So that's what we're talking about when we say couplers. It's the top of the keg that you've, at your keg party that you've tapped, like those are different fittings for different parts, for different breweries. There's many different fittings. There's probably 20 or 30 of them. And for them to be like, all right, a bar, I'm dealing with Be United, it's all U.S. standard Sankey, like it's just a one little thing to make it easier. Oh, it's fresh.
Point.
Oh, it's U.S. Sankey. Oh, and it's just like, okay, now I can just, my imports can go through Be United. Very, very smart. Mm-hmm. But they're only one, right? That's only one importer who is doing it that way. So I hope they serve as a model. But right now, there is, in my mind, a vacuum. I've been talking about it for a while, Mike, as you mentioned. I saw it definitely with the European stuff. I started seeing it definitely with the UK. I was like, when we never could get a mile, but that made sense. It's too delicate a style, right? But then we started seeing Scottish styles, Scottish ales, Scotch ales, all that stuff just like disappearing. Like, what are you talking about? This is the archetype of the style, and now you're taking it away, and you realize they don't care about the archetype of the style.
No.
That this wears the badge of honor, right. and then you started seeing ESBs, and now like I think technically, but if not technically, then in function, Fuller's is not in the Chicago market. I mean, how messed up is that? London Pride, Fuller's ESB, like they're like big beer. That's like big beer if you go to England. Certainly on the real ale side, they're I would guess the biggest. Can't even get it in a huge market like us. Completely devoid of English ale. Completely devoid of Belgian like drinking beer, like Belgian, like I don't know, like a classic true Belgian blonde or a saison that you could just like have on draft somewhere. It's just not there. I mean, even DuPont, it's so expensive. It's excessively expensive to put on draft. So Be United's doing one thing, but the overall state of Belgian and British beer in import is shit right now. It's bad. Sorry, Serge. Oh man, he gave me an angry
dab.
Dab.
The hardest, angriest dab I've ever seen.
I know. It's amazing. So what happened as a result, right? What's happening now, right? Is it just, more hazy for me? Or is there anyone you think stateside who's noticing this and doing anything about it?
Yeah, I think that the thing is that, like, one of the currents of this whole conversation is that styles, trends, behaviors are all internalized differently and over time in different places at different evolutionary. I like your word inflection points earlier,
Right?
And I think that in one way we can look at imported beer as something that is not really at its greatest health, but in a lot of other ways, it's actually thriving in other manners. And I think that I kind of had another section here of what we can do to be better.
Sure.
When it comes to imported beer, and I think that this is kind of where we can kind of give it the shot. And I think that there's so many different producers in the U.S. that are reverent to European producers in their styles, in their steps of service, in their branding. It's all tied together in so many different ways. And so I think the link is there's a missing link there between the contemporary producer that is creating these European styles of beer and then the consumer's knowledge perhaps of what those beers are that were the originators, and then an ability to demand them so that they come back. Because that's probably where things have to start, is from the consumer's level, right? The consumer has to tell the retailer that, hey, I want this thing. The retailer has to go to the importer and say, hey, you have the brand rights for this thing. This is in a warehouse somewhere. Bring it here.
And we were talking about this, Alexi, and I saw you get, I think, as angry as I've ever seen you when I was telling you about how I was saying things like, for example, Fuller's. I mean, Fuller's, Alexi, big distributor in Chicago. Bring in Fuller's. No. What do you want? I'll buy it. I'll pre-order it. Just order it. You just have to pass it through. Yeah, we're not bringing in any new SKUs. But didn't you just tell me about the 7 new high noon SKUs that are why you got to bring up old stuff? It's like it's just like they're not bringing in new SKUs. We're paring stuff down. We're not going to do it, and that's been like a 3-year-old thing that I noticed, and that to me signaled the beginning of the end. I still remember literally where I was when I saw one of the quote unquote one of the good ones, one of the good distributors, just be like, no, we're not bringing that in. And it was the first time that we were like, but we want it and we'll buy it all. Like, no, we're not bringing it in. And that affects out of market U.S. beer as well, but it hits imports the hardest. You just cannot get this stuff in anymore. What do you do? I guess I could start working with the importer, start putting pressure, start, doing that sort of stuff. But that's where we are right now.
Yeah. Let's look at this a little more piecemeal. So
Yes.
I
Sorry.
suggested no. I totally teased the chain look at it, but let's go through like a couple of different things. So for the importers and for the people that are actually buying the beer from Europe and bringing it over, I think one of the things that is a lesson of all of this is that over time these companies have built up massive footprints in the U.S. that are probably unsustainable at this point. And so, where we've seen success, and one of the examples that we pointed out was Be United, and that was they aren't in every market, but they're deep in the markets that they are in, and they represent in those markets. And that's why they've been successful as far as they can be here in Chicago. And that's also why partially, Chris, you have such fond memories of imported beer in the Mid-Atlantic, is because those brands were represented, and without that, you can't expect consumers to know everything, right?
Right. You can't expect them to know hardly anything about it.
Right.
So-
And it trickles down. Sorry.
No, so you have to the first contact has to be like, we're going to educate you. We're going to bring you to this. And that's not necessarily where the modern consumer's at.
Right, because you educate the buyer at the shop or the bartender. He then talks about it to an excited consumer, and then, I mean, it trickles down. But you have to have it at some point, and you know, the closer you can get to the end result, which is why they even do like little. You know, that's why they classically did not imports, but just any brewery would do like supermarket tastings or something like that. Like get somebody as close to the consumer as possible to tell the story directly, because as many people as you can cut out, the better.
And that depth has to be hard to achieve when there are so many breweries in any given market, right? There's so many other people making beer telling a different story. When it's just there's no one in Philadelphia making beer. And so this one importer or these people bringing beers in can capture all of the people that want to hear that type of story. That's a much more impactful single move, if that makes sense. Like it's like
sure. I could imagine someone saying, "Yeah, but we created the market." We were talking to somebody being like, what are you talking about? Beer? I have beer. It's called Rolling Rock, you know, in the Mid-Atlantic, or it's called, you know, Bud Light or Natural Light, you know. So I'm sure they had their own. I'm playing straight up devil's advocate.
I
think there was definitely a sweet spot there where it was like it was starting to catch on. But it was catching on because of the work of these people, right?
Totally. Yeah, I don't want to discount the work those people were doing at that time in those markets. Like, and as someone who's trying to grow a saison brand right now, it's you have to like it's like spinning your wheels a lot with that type of stuff, right? Where it's like some people that were like, oh, this is pretty good, and then also other people like I don't even know what a saison is, so like. You just do that over and over and over again until it's more viable and known. I mean, like, so yeah, I'm not saying that it was easier then. You had to create that market, but when there was nothing else, there was no other option for like, what is this artisanal like thing? What is this like? I don't know, different flavored beer thing that. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. It was, just like, it was a different time to sell that type of beer.
That's a 3-hour episode thing to say.
I think this segues really well into what, you know, in one place, bars and restaurants and as we would characterize as the on-premise, what can they do to be better for imported beer, and what can they do to facilitate this in some way? Ultimately, a lot of imported beer was consumed on premise, and that was, you know, part of why the starting block is going to be so challenging post-pandemic is, in addition to some of the logistical problems of getting stuff in at stuffed borders, is that now that stuff has to come back through those channels where they were most consumed. And so, you know, some of the things that came to mind for me was that there has to be some sort of return to viewing these things as the premium products for what they are, and for buyers to understand the reality that variety is going to be sort of the king of what you can do to share different experiences with different people and to reach different people from different backgrounds with different flavor profiles. Having a variety is important. And then on top of that, I think that staff training is absolutely crucial with this and anything, because the transfer of passion and knowledge. I mean, this is something that anyone who worked with me in the last 4 years would harp on forever. The transfer of passion and knowledge is what sales are. And so, totally. I mean, for you, Chris, as far as someone that operates a bar and a store, what are some of the things that you think you could do, or that you do that others could take note of?
Well, Really, what I have tried to instill to the buyers at the Beer Temple is how important it is to the vision of the Beer Temple to listen to what these people have to say, to taste what they're doing, to talk to them. If they haven't reached out to you for a while, set a reminder and reach out to them. I had one go off today. That's like a 5 or 6 year old reminder that to reach out to 12% imports because their whatever comes out at this time of the month, and I have to like ask them about it and stuff like that, just to kind of be on top of that sort of stuff. And
Can I ask you about a specific beer?
yeah,
Rothaus.
yeah,
Rothaus. Mm-hmm. What was that like? Like when you
totally
brought it in
different
here?
than. So I think that part of the lucky, some of it I think is transfer of passion and knowledge, right? So as the owner of this place, good or bad, right or wrong, when I'm passionate about something, it tends to transfer differently than when other people at this shop are passionate about something. So it was a big distributor, like, a Bud Miller Coors distributor, bringing in a sample. And that had happened many, many times before. And it's usually like, all right, you're going to bring in some hot garbage trying to compete with a real lager, and you've got to deal with, it's going to go into every Binny's already, so that was already established ahead of time. And I remember seeing this stuff for years, totally beat up. He poured the bottle.
Seeing Rothaus for years, or seeing this type of
That type of thing, presentation.
Bringing in this,
this person did not know much about it. Mm-hmm. This is this new lager, and essentially, either he or someone told him that they definitely had to taste it out here.
Yeah.
Or this was one of the places they wanted to taste it out. I happen to be there. I'm usually not. I'm usually like when I say not there, I'm usually in this building. I'm not at the bar when they're tasting this stuff out, and when that stuff starts happening, I often just walk away because that's going to be 20 minutes that I'm tied. Yeah, because yes.
Yeah.
At some point, you have to have trust in the people who are going to be doing that, right?
Right.
It was slow. He set that one out, and we were pouring it, and Steven and I were sitting there, and I, was drinking, and I was like, this beer's pretty good. And then I was like, this beer is really good. And then we had been like geeked that we had Weichstefan Pills on draft one. It was the first time we put it on. It had been on for maybe a week or something like that, probably less. And I was like, pour some Weichstefan, Steven. And he poured it, and I drank it, and I said, this beer's better than that. And that's just where it came from. And then it came in, and I told essentially that story. I didn't name names, so to speak, with what beer it was. And that's really all it took. That's all we did. We just transferred passion. Right? That's all we did. So that was the story of Rothaus for us. We didn't do anything, but
I know you can't say this, but from observing this, that made it a thing in Chicago. Like other places are carrying or when they can get it, carry Rothaus because of how well it did here.
So they're bringing in a Meritzen, right?
Yeah.
And
I tried to buy some of this.
Right. Well, there's going to be another pre-sale tomorrow.
Sick. Ad.
Right. And I was talking to the Rothaus rep today. And
do they have a dedicated rep?
No, it's St. Killian's.
All right,
But he was saying how they're doing it only as pre-order, and I was like, well, how much? I have to figure out how much I'm going to pre-order based on who is bringing it in.
Yeah.
But he can't tell me. but he was being super cool about it. It was a bit of a dance, and we were both being like,
What do you
okay,
mean? Who is bringing it in? The distributor?
how much is the distributor bringing in
Got it.
above what I'm ordering? Do I need to order more, or am I ordering too much?
Okay.
Right? Okay. So we were talking about it quite a bit today. And we're bringing in a lot of it, pallets of it.
Yeah. But you were selling a pallet of the pills.
Yeah, but this ain't a pills, and it's
Right.
also coming in a month later than we thought it was supposed to be. So there's all this stuff going on, right? So, but it came down to who's bringing it in. He's like, well, Binny's was interested in it, and
Oh,
there
you
are
mean
some
like
other
at the
shops.
retail level?
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah, okay.
there's other shops, and I said, okay, so Binny's wants to do it, and then other people who saw me do a pre-order and wants to do it. And he chuckled, and he was like, yeah, I mean, essentially, you guys definitely have had, and wasn't trying to like blow.
You were trying to blow yourself up. Like,
To this one dude on the
deal.
phone.
Yeah.
On the phone. Now I'm trying to blow
Yeah,
myself up.
what
No,
I
but you
love is-
asked. But the idea was like, okay, I immediately then had an idea of the types of accounts, and I'm trying to think, okay, all right, well, I'm cool
Can I
with that.
burn that place down? Can I burn
right.
that place down?
No, I'm just trying to do little calculations, formulations in what I was going to do, what we should do as a business as a result of that. For the original Rothaus, I will say also, all right, you guys want some inside bit? You want some dirt? I'll dish some dirt. Okay.
I guess so.
I probably shouldn't say this. So, we only got one keg of Rothaus like last week or 2 weeks ago.
That's some BS, Chris.
Yeah, because Lee, for his going away party, wanted to have Rothaus on.
Did he make that?
No, he
Oh,
did
he
not.
didn't. All right.
No, he did not.
Kind of broke the theme.
We had
of the
one
party.
keg, and we didn't put it on because we probably would have kicked it like that night or like partway through the next day.
What a terrible thing to have to sell all the beer you bought.
Right. Well, we also had Fader from Half Acre, and we didn't
That's a
want to
good beer.
cannibalize
Cannibalize his own beer, right?
Yes, and which I did say to Lee.
Even though he requested it.
Right.
Cool.
So
Not his beer anymore, I suppose.
we did have Sierra Nevada
The
Pale
vibe
Ale
of that
on.
party.
So anyway,
Did he make that?
So, I did reach out to Rothaus. I was like, why do we only have one keg? And Steven was like, I wanted over 5. It's allocated, 1 per account. And then I emailed the people and was like, I do not usually ask for exceptionalism. That's the word I used. I said, but in this
But
case.
we're America. And we're
Right,
exceptional.
exactly. I said, but in this case,
Yeah.
if Steven wants 5 kegs, I think we should get 5 kegs. And I said, if 25 are coming in,
And
that's fine.
Let me interject. Like, you have sold more Rothaus than any other account in this. Like,
Well, what
you're
I
not
said-
being like, you're,
Yeah.
It's one thing for you to say it, but like, you guys made that brand in Chicago easily.
Well, what I
so
said
for
to
you
them-
to ask for 5 kegs is not.
And that's over
an
a
absurd
year
thing.
since this all started, right?
Well, so that's exactly what I put in the email. This is stuff I probably shouldn't say, but whatever. What I said was, now I'm getting the same amount as places that were passing on the beer in October 2019, before the pandemic. I put the date because it was before the pandemic.
Yeah.
It's like, so I get the same amount as that place? Not cool. Not cool. And I said, I said, there's been times where we've had over 90% of the beer that was dropped, we took. It wasn't allocated. We didn't take it all at once. We just took it in 2-week chunks or 3-week chunks. 40, 40, 60 cases. Bang,
insane
bang,
number.
bang.
It's a high number.
There were times like we were taking 90 cases and the rest of the city took 10.
Right.
And it was sustained. And they know that, but I want them to know that I know that.
Yeah.
So I was like, 1 keg, that's almost like a burden for us. I mean, we want it, but it's like, it's going to be on and off in a day, which is exactly what happened. And also being like, what's up with that? So it is funny. That did just happen, and
So what you're saying is
like
that
once a year, I kind of
most of these people
bitch
importing
out
beer
people.
do not care about you, and that's why you're not carrying import beers anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
I
I'm just
did
kidding.
say,
It was,
I did say,
obviously a
I
joke.
hope this does not continue. I thought about saying something like, we sell a lot of Trumer. Trumer's on draft.
Trumer won our taste off.
Right, I wouldn't have said that. But I didn't want to use Trumer. I would never have said Trumer as a, but like, there's other lagers out there, and like, come on, man. Like, but it's far from that. They've been awesome. Rothaus has been awesome. They've been great with, I just want.
We call the back away, folks.
No. It's called the I'm getting in the mindset of what I was
Well,
like
it's
at that
something-
moment, but they've been overall
Well, it's also something
very
you,
good.
you care very deeply about.
Yeah.
And like the contextualization is more for understanding the story rather than your feelings around
you.
it.
Thank you.
where, Where like,
But that's the truth. I'm not trying to like
Right, it's
puff
not like,
my chest or anything.
no.
But these are also stories that shouldn't be, that imported beer doesn't
Thank
need
you,
right
Alexi,
now.
for bringing it back.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
in the sense that,
Right.
The wind up to this was more than just Rothaus, but this was also a pill showcase before that. And so these are the kinds of things that actually are really valuable tools for on-premise, because it wasn't just Rothaus that became a thing because the general style awareness was brought about by the efforts of an influential on-premise account in the city. But you also were able to showcase Trumer. There were other beers that came from abroad that people were delivering by sample in mediums that weren't even available just to be there. And that's the type of excitement generation that is going to be really, really important for imported beer.
That's true. I mean, what you're saying there is a little bit was so Trumer ended up winning, and the Trumer rep for the first round had stuff flown in to drop off for the first tasting, which was not open to the public. It was a private tasting. Mike, you were there.
very special.
And he brought in Trumer bottles. He had them in Trumer glass cases.
You also have
So they would not touch the light.
you have regular customers that you're like, these are the lager guys. Right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
they
yeah.
come and taste lagers.
We
They
had
were
two
sitting
of
at the
them.
bar today, like just drinking Jaeger after Jaeger.
Right.
It was fresh.
He loves Jaeger.
Yeah, it's the best one.
So no, because those guys I trust their opinions, and but anyway, what I hope made it through to some people, at least I don't know who it would be, and when I say some people, I don't mean like a person. I don't have any one
cabal-
person
the
in
cabal.
mind. Right? Someone thinks that I don't mean it that way. Was if anyone thought that they could just that the Germans or the Europeans just made better lager, and it doesn't matter that their stuff wasn't fresh, that their stuff would still just kind of compete and stuff like that. I mean, I think it became very apparent that was not the case, because the stuff that did not come in good shape was just, it had no chance. It had no chance of competing.
And like American attention to lager production in that type of way, the artisanal way, has gotten very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
So for the state of like imported continental lager, it's like we joke about locality being like, oh, it's so important, and like maybe it's not, but the technical ability for American breweries to execute those styles has ascended so quickly, and it's been people are like, oh, craft lager is the next big thing. It's always the ability to produce it has far trailed the American desire to drink high quality craft lager, and I think we're catching up currently. So that's another.
We're definitely on a
little
tangent,
ding.
but I do want to say, since we're on tangents, screw it. This 2008, it's now it says it's October. This is the St. Bernardus 12.
Okay.
Or maybe it was 2009. 2009. So we're creeping up. It's a little older. But it's a 12-year-old almost exactly a beer. This beer is a banger. This beer tastes 12 years old. This beer is. It tastes great.
That's
tastes
why
great.
those to bring it all back home. That's why those Belgians could sit on the shelf and be delicious. And
after 12, it's great. So after 2, it's like hasn't even started.
Yeah, we have
doesn't even have chest
we're
on
in
its hair.
inning 2 of 9 on the hop exploration game.
But what we were talking about before, Alexi, we keep going on these tangents. Is there's kind of a void there, and what I've seen is some U.S. breweries trying to kind of fill that. I mean, I certainly think whether that was the intention or not, that is an amazing example of that.
Thank you.
Of trying to. No. No, but I mean, but it's happening all over the place. I don't know if it's happening with Saison, but like you're not doing, but it's important to say, like, you're not doing the side project Hill Farm, that Farmstead Neo Saison, that Americanized Saison, that kind of iterative Fantôme Saison.
Right.
You're doing the Blagis. You're doing the DuPont. You're doing the de Glazenturen, Thierry, yada yada yada, all Baron.
Those are my heroes.
Yeah, and it's it's great. I mean, I love that people are doing that. You for Saison, other people for other styles. But that's what's filling the void, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this, like, I want to shift it to the off premise, and I want to kick it over to you, Mike. So, do you feel as though stores display your product correctly, and should you be by other local producers? Should you be by Belgian breweries?
Great question.
It is not that important to me, to be honest. I let them put us wherever they think they should. I think we're somewhere in between them as far as our production ideas are. Where we're displayed and the contextualization of that is actually, I would prefer to be closer to wine. I think people that drink natural wine are much more interested in what I'm making right now than people who drink the larger cadre of people who drink craft beer. When I'm in a craft beer store, people are very aware of what they like in beer, right? They're very aware of the hops they like. They're very aware of the styles of IPA they like. And it's been an interesting interaction with people to be like, no, this is also beer. When we go to a wine store, people are very open to the idea of what is this beer we're tasting out now. It's been a very interesting shift from when I worked at a liquor store, 10 years ago, that was focused on craft beer, to the people that were coming in to buy craft beer were specifically open to kind of anything. Whereas now it's the consumer I interact with when I do tastings is much more aware of a very narrow understanding of what beer is, and it's almost getting you to unlearn what that is, and then reapproach our beers. So at a beer store, I don't know, it's what you put us wherever you want.
It's like it reminds me of the story that I mentioned after coming back from Boston. The heart of Juicy Hazy World.
Now you only drink Trulies.
Exactly. But the people there were drinking. They were crushing those High Noons, which is the first place I had seen it because I'm so up on things. And there was Trillium there. There was Treehouse at this barbecue, and there was like over 100 people there. I mean, it was a big thing, and it wasn't like a sample size of 3 people. And my perception was, to them, they were calling Trillium Treehouse craft beer. So that was craft beer to them. They're like, yeah, I can craft beer. I do like craft beer. They also knew that like I was Joe's friend who was in. I'm the craft beer guy, so I also had that in mind. They're like, no, I like craft beer. I like it. I love Trillium, which we were literally in Canton, Massachusetts, which is where Trillium is from. And but they're like, but I can only have like one, maybe two. And then I crush High Noons. And then why even start? Because I can just crush High Noons from the get-go then. And the whole idea was, to me, that was that, like you said, you have to like unteach them what craft beer is, because it's become as, I stopped shouting it because I can only shout it so much. Like, there's too much of the same out there, man. And I know you guys are saying that it's all different. And even you and I would argue about it.
Well, this is an argument. Like, I think we're talking about the same thing, but we would have arguments about, like, I'm saying the whole pool of people who are paying attention to artisanally produced beer in America is larger,
and the number of English bitters in the U.S. is probably larger. There's more English bitter being made in the U.S. than ever before, right? It probably. Or I'm using that as an example. I think that's where we were getting into the argument.
Right.
But I was saying, like, it doesn't matter. It's a drop in the bucket compared to
but that drop
is
numerically so much bigger. There's so much more volume to that drop. I'm not even. I don't think I ever made the argument that there was more mild being made in America, but that there are more people who would want to engage with the idea of beer in that way, but that not all of the people in that, like, huge amount of consumer base would want to engage in beer with the way that we engage with beer, the way that we like dive deep into like what's the idea of the importance of imports. But there are more people in general paying attention to it, and hopefully more of them come through that idea of like everything tastes like an IPA or everything's supposed to taste like juice. That we're at the point now where with seltzers and with other flavored beverages that honestly, craft beer has kind of led people into, with things supposed to be tasting like juice, just puree and as the flavor. The people that we could have pulled through into other styles of beer or things that we care about as beer or people that were never going to come through in the first place are leaving the category or are going to leave the category and drink the High Noons. But that was always probably something that was going to happen.
Yeah.
So I was saying, at that point, there were more people than there were ever going to be paying attention to the possibility of having those things. And I still think that's true. I still think there's more people that are aware of what good Saison is now than there were in 2008.
So then what does that mean, Alexi? Like, where do we go from here?
I guess the thing is on the off-prem side, like, is the issue also coming down to where these things are displayed and if there's equity as far as how things are organized? Because if things are organized based on how they are in relation to each other flavor-wise versus where they are produced geographically, or in some cases what importer or distributor is bringing them in, because that's how a lot of stores are organized, is you have your local area, you have your shit that needs to be cold, and then you have your stuff from far away, generally speaking, and they're all segregated out. But if we're talking about like creating equity in some way, isn't there an aspect of should be by Blasi and shouldn't be by local
I got to
beers?
be honest, more often than not, the stores we're in don't have other Saisons. Like, they might have breweries that make a Saison, but they don't have Blasi. They probably may have never carried Blasi. And those are craft beer focused stores. So I can't say put us by the Blasi or put us by the Belgian ones, because it's just such a small set. There's probably a few Lambics. There's probably a few Trappist beers, but most of the places that are purveying craft beer to the majority of people don't carry those things.
Think about that same thing with like any kind of low alcohol English beer, any kind of low alcohol Belgian beer. I mean, put me by the even saying Belgian blonde is like a death sentence because that's now an Americanized term.
We've talked about that like on text where it's like, we got to figure out something else to use.
No,
for
I
this
mean
because-
I think that's going to be my thing now is reintroduce versions of these classic styles, but have no name that associates style. Give it a new style. Call it a, Chicago Ale. Call it whatever the heck
we've
you
had this
want
conversation.
to call
it's too
it.
hard. It's too
Yeah.
hard to create a whole new vernacular for those things, right? It's just you might be able to figure out if you have a lot of time, patience, and money how to do it with one thing, but to completely remove and I hate style and think it's as useless as anything for the production of beer, but for the contextualization of it for like a purchase, like for the people to purchase it. You can't just start from the beginning. I would love it if we can, and I would love to like help you with it, but it seems like a very, very high hill to climb to completely erase style from Belgian blonde or what something like that.
I think wine is doing it quite a bit. I think
It's still very grape based though, right? When you
yeah,
see,
but
like,
some of
people
them
changing.
also are like I like blends, and it's like, well, man, that could be a gajillion different things. Like it doesn't need to say the varietal on it anymore. It can say, why don't you have the name be evocative? I mean, I know this is an easy one, but like Jungle Boogie is an amazing example of it. It says pale wheat ale with rooibos, which does not describe that beer at all. Jungle Boogie describes that beer.
Sure.
In hindsight, I mean, nobody who drinks that beer and says pale wheat ale, that's the first thing I noticed about it. It's the first way I sold that beer was ignore the description. Don't think about that. Because people are like, oh, pale wheat ale? No. They're thinking fruited, old school brew pub beer.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So they're like, no. Just ignore that. You know? It's Jungle Boogie. It's its own thing. You know? So I think is maybe a way forward for some of these styles.
The
and also
style.
or whatever it is. Yeah. I mean, but, that's neither here nor there. I don't think the breweries have any, there's no, they're under no commitment to save these styles. I just personally think that a more diverse styles is going to be better for beer overall. It's going to be better for people to see like, oh my gosh, there is so much out there that I can just go down a rabbit hole for my entire drinking career of like just of my hobbyist style as from a hobbyist perspective of just the stuff, which is kind of how I approach wine. Like I'd love to know more about like Italian wine, but I'm just so intimidated by it that I just am constantly like dipping my toes in, and I don't see that as like a negative thing about wine at all. I certainly don't want to think of wine as like it's all the same damn stuff.
Sure.
Or the same four things, and I think wine's been pretty smart as of late. I think they've learned a lot from craft beer, certainly from labeling and packaging.
That's another thing we're saying.
Everybody.
The focal point of influence shifting where it's
Oh my gosh. Packaging cans? I mean, think about how craft beer has opened people up to paying premium prices for cans, for paying premium prices for sticker labels.
Have you seen like a bottled cocktail recently? It's all canned now.
It's all cans. What about canned high-end sakes that would never move in that crazy bottle, even though it had this crazy pink frosted thing in a swooping, sexy style? Nope. Put it in a can. Bang. Off the shelf. People like it, and that is all thanks to U.S. craft beer.
Yeah.
I mean, thank you, Oscar Blues.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Change the world.
Yeah. Is there anything else we need to say?
I think we can do a little parting, and that's something for the consumers. So how can we as consumers, Mike the beer drinker, Chris the beer drinker, Alexi the beer drinker, how can we be better to support imports? And I have this thing that I always do, and it's pretty simple. Go outside your comfort zone. And if you see a label in another language that you don't understand, don't be afraid of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't be afraid of what you don't know.
Yeah, mine's going to go the opposite way of like, if there's something that you've loved for a very long time that you haven't had, buy it and drink it. Don't buy it and put it in your fridge. Buy it and have it, and then connect with it in the way that you are now and think about what it was like when you had it the first time or when you had it a bunch of times when you had it then.
I love both of those. Man, what can I do more? I think complain more. Complain more. Get it in front of people. Try to get this stuff out more. Something that I'm not doing entirely. I think I should try imports from emerging markets more.
More open-mindedly too, right?
Yes.
Sometimes you're like, what are they going to be making? And then
Right. I want to do that. I want to see what the emerging markets are doing. And I want to see, and not make assumptions that it's about how Americanized it is, because a lot of times they're not.
Right.
Sometimes they are, and I will say that's often disappointing but there's you have to try things. You have to try them.
I think that's if you are bored with
them.
American craft beer, there's a whole world of beer out there that you can just you might not like all of it, but get outside of that. Like, well, I know what this Citrus Simcoe Mosaic IPA is going to taste like, and try something that you haven't had from a place that you don't know about very well.
Mm-hmm. And I think also for us, even for people that have been doing this for a long time, we need to create confidence in people that are selling beer today. And what that looks like is to talk to someone that works in a store and trust their opinion and trust their perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Alexi.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Someone's put some thought into it. Yes. Get off the apps.
Yeah.
I want to take that back. Don't get off the apps, but see the forest for the trees. That is a tree or a group of trees or a huge group of trees, let's say, even in the forest. But who is putting in these check marks? You have no idea who they are. The person in front of you, you can at least then reference whether you agree or don't agree or kind of agree with them.
And then build confidence in yourself and the way that you perceive these beers, and that it's not necessarily how they appear on Untapped. You might like something that isn't beautiful on Untapped, and that's probably correct. It's definitely correct for how you like it. So,
I mean, how about this? How about, I was saying before, for people out there to think of their best beer drinking experience, and I said, I bet you it involved someone else, right?
Yeah.
Or other people, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't you by yourself, and it wasn't you in a crowd of 1,000 people where you were nameless, right?
Right.
I bet you that your best beer drinking experiences also were off. Let's just think of some out there right now. I bet you that they were referred to you by an actual frigging human, an actual human.
Yeah.
Like your friend said, "Oh man, you got to try this beer. Oh, I had that beer. It's awesome. That one that's rated really highly on Untapped, it's great." And then you had it and you're like, oh man, he was right. It is great. It wasn't strictly, my only interaction with it was a bottle cap rating,
right.
So think about that, like the actual person talking to you about it, priming you for it, and then you trying it, it means something.
That's all part of your interaction, right? Is the experience you have with these liquids, not just the liquids themselves.
Totally. I mean, why do you think everyone loves Terrace Bulba? I mean, let's be real, folks. I mean, it's awesome, but dude, everybody has either. I mean, it's such an industry geek beer now that everyone's had someone that they really, really respect say how much they like it.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. That has an effect on that beer. You can't say it doesn't.
Of course it does. Yeah. But it also is like the perfect.
And then it backs it up.
Yeah.
Right. But the point being, if you were just like, oh my gosh, Terrace Bulba is the highest bottle-capped Belgian pale, and then you had it, it wouldn't have the same effect. It couldn't. You couldn't taste it that way.
So ultimately, imports are about your local friends.
Yeah.
Everyone you love.
Mm-hmm. Just like they always were.
Yeah, always have been, always will be.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys. Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been an epic 2-part show. I'm just going to call it.
Probably.
Right, no, it is. It is. This is a 2-part show. Thank you so much, Alexi, for allowing me to return the favor of the never-ending show.
Thank you. This has been an incredible experience. I've enjoyed myself immensely.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Man.
I'll see you tomorrow, Mike.
Yeah, right? Yeah. What are you guys talking about tomorrow? Was beer?
Mixed culture beers and the different approaches.
Man, you guys are going to been on air for recorded
most of our lives
the
next 2 days.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sleep just because of it.
It's amazing. Well, I want to thank everyone out there. I want to remind you that if you want to interact with us, we'd love. I mean, honestly, even if it's like, hey, what are some imports? What are some? It can be just very transactional questions that you have for us. People do ask me that sort of stuff, and I just shoot them little emails in return. You can send that to insiders at craftbeertemple.com. If it's a question for Mike or even Alexi, I'll forward it on. Or for Serge, what did you mean when you dabbed that way? I'll have to be a video. Right. It'll be a video reply.
Dab all night.
Yeah, But yeah, that's it. We will be back next week with more of the Beer Temple podcast, I think. What's up?
Same episode probably next week.
Probably. Well, we'll
This is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again.